Hey everybody, it's Elizabeth from Silvernest Homeschooling, mom of four, and I am going to show you how I go through and decide what I'm going to do for a unit study using Gather Round to prep for books. But this will work for any kind of unit study that you're trying to do to gather things that has a list of suggestions, and how I go through and eliminate and decide how much to do and how much not to do, how to pull from my house, how to pull from other resources, when to spend money, when not to spend money. The biggest mistake I've always made is spending too much money on trying to get the perfect book and then realizing the information was probably the same as other things that I already had. So what we're going to be doing next for after chemistry is our life skills class for my 7th grader. And so I purchased the list, and this list is actually free online, but I purchased the unit and I'll be printing that out later after I get my ink. But this I got first, and so what we've got is the novels that they suggest for upper elementary through high school at the top, and then every single lesson has its own topic. Okay, so these are just books that other people have suggested, and obviously since I'm working with somebody that sometimes I'll pull from the upper elementary school, oftentimes I'll just pull from the middle school. Now and then I'll do a high school, but in general, for this kid, but in general, it's usually a little bit less, going down some for some picture books to kind of mix it up. This is the year she's outgrown picture books at a new level that I've ever experienced before. And that does kind of happen in 7th grade. You know, they start getting cool and needing, things that look like them. But 6th grade, she was more than happy to have like a mix. So anyway, I print this off. I don't have to print it off. I could have it on my phone, but in this case I did. And then I went through, the very first thing I do is check and see if I own any of the books that fit with the topics at my house already. In this case, I didn't. Then the second thing I do is I go look up and see if my library has copies of them. And then I order them in advance so I can flip through them and go through them. So I ordered Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper, The 7 Most Important Thing by Shelley Purcell. Now, ordering them doesn't mean we're going to use them. It just means I'm going to have them so I can flip through them and decide, okay? But then the other thing I'm doing at the same time is going through and reading the different subjects, right? Safety, vehicles, first aid, that kind of thing. And then what I'm doing, and I didn't grab all of them because I'm in the middle of it, but the second thing that I do is go through and kind of think through what books I already have that might fit some of these topics. So in this case, there is a little bit about entrepreneurship, and so I did buy this book this year. Haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I thought I might go through that myself and see if there's anything in there to help share with her. Also, I have this modern manners book that I usually have my 8th graders read some of, but I can, again, one of my techniques is to go through and use washi tape or sticky notes to grab sections I want my kids to read, so they're not necessarily going to read the whole book. So I may have her read some this year, some next year, but some stuff that I think that she herself could work on when we get to that section. Also, I like to go over careers every year, so this I picked up a few years ago. This one has been a blessing. And then I have them review a variety of ideas that they think might be a job that they're interested in, and there is a section in here on how to apply for a job, so I figured that would be a good time to again look up careers. Also, I have this book for the younger, what I like the outdoors, what jobs are there. This is probably the last time I'll be able to use it, but I've had her review and research quite a few of these over the last 4 or 5 years. She'll pick 1 or 2 each year, and she's getting to the point where she knows which one she's not interested in, but it's really helpful. The no's are just as powerful as the yeses. So, and they do change. The kids obviously do change from time to time. I also happen to already own a home repair improvement book, which I think is great for any family, especially if the internet goes down and you can't get a hold of stuff. Sometimes you can pick one up from a thrift store that's older. This was a gift to us from someone, and so, but it's nice just to have. You don't have to go back and forth to your phone. You can just throw it out and dig in it and make a mess in it. So we'll probably go through this a bit when it comes. It has I think we have to learn about toilets and installing. So there's a whole section on plumbing. So again, I'll probably tag the sections that we want to use and then give her maybe a small assignment like how to fix, something, or maybe have her paint something. She's already painted her room before. I know that's kind of crazy, but in our world, that's not as crazy as maybe some other worlds. So she picked her color and she painted her room. And so, but maybe, have her read this section on maintaining gutters and have her go clean out the gutters, something useful like that. There's also a section on cooking. And so again, I just went over to our shelf and looked for books that we already have. I don't think we've ever done this one, the cookbook for teen chefs. I think this was a gift to one of my kids this last year. And so we might try to go through. She really loves to bake, but I'm going to try to push her a little bit towards meals, though she does know how to make meals, but her repertoire is kind of small, obviously it's 7th grade. So I'm going to try to push her a little bit more for that. This is one of her favorite books. We've gone through this one a lot. Highly recommend baking class. In fact, I have a video on how we used that for one of our classes a couple years ago. And then my favorite, really had to buy a second copy because my first copy fell apart, was gifted to us at our wedding. This is even an older copy than the one we got for our wedding. So it's quite old, but it is great because it has the pictures that kind of give an idea. So even if this is a grown-up book, but it helps visually like think through some of the things that you're trying to do. So especially if you have a visual learner who's not doing so great with the just the words. And again, the positive about having an actual cookbook, I know it's like a debate, like why bother? I do print off stuff online, from the internet for different recipes that we're looking for, but this I can get dirty. The kids can mess with. They're not going to mess up their phones, their computers. Obviously saves paper from reprinting things. And since it's an older copy I picked up at a thrift store or online or something like that, because I was looking for a specific book, I often look at thrift books. Then it will be, something that they can use. And then sometimes we actually have a couple cookbooks. We'll actually write in the date of when we made it and whether we liked it or not, what kind of star we gave it. And so it just becomes sort of more of a family heirloom. We probably have about 9 cookbooks, 10 cookbooks. A lot of them do belong to my kids. And then I have maybe 4 or 5 that I use frequently. I have a Joy of Cooking, which I find the recipes to be really hard. So I try not to give that one to the kids when they're first learning, but the combination of the Good Housekeeping Illustrated Cookbook and the Joy of Cooking can kind of give you similarities between the 2 recipes. And that's often how I cook, where I look up multiple recipes of the same thing and see what's in common and how I can tweak it to what I have in the house. All right, so once I have started to gather my materials, and yes, like I said, there's more, like I have a book on money and some stuff like that, then I will get out my planner and I will start to make notes, write down which ones that I want to do. And then by visually, for me, again, go back to the kind of learner you are, by visually looking at how big and how much this is combined with the school that they'll be doing, I make decisions on how much I think they can get through, how much I want them to get through. Most of these are for one day. So if you're talking about, emergency preparedness for one day or outdoor maintenance for one day, like my daughter's already been mowing the lawn, we're not going to spend money on an illustrative history of the lawn, but I'm going to try to teach her something she hasn't done yet. So this one may not have. And then the other thing is like trying to have maybe 1 or 2 larger novel books. When you have these older kids, not necessarily giving them like a new book every day, but when they were younger, I would read like piles of books for each of these lessons because they're short and they're not, take a long time. Now that they're reading them themselves, I might try 1 or 2 of these, the Cleaning Ninja or Decluttering Speed of Life, some of those, having a pile of those and then letting them pick one of them and just say, hey, you go for it. Or if I find there's something very specific that I feel like they need to understand that I can tell. I mean, by 7th grade, you kind of know what they don't know and what they do know. And again, having had a child already graduate and another one who's going to be a senior next year, I'm beginning to see what parts and gaps that we left in their world. And that's partly why we're doing this. So while like they're really good at this level, but then this over here might get skipped. So what I'm hoping to do with this lesson is to fill in some of those gaps. But I really like it. Of course, my kids already do their own laundry. Safety, we have gone over some safety stuff. First aid, they've done some first aid stuff. I do have a first aid book from the 1901 that's hilarious to compare. But, and then we do like this kind of thing would probably serve us best if it had to do with like camping. So I actually was looking for some camping ones. But I did order some of these to see if they'll be any good. Vehicles, she knows very little about vehicles, but often we go through that when they take driver's ed, which is when they're 15. So we may not spend a lot of time on that. So that's what I've been doing. I'm not done yet. I'm still going through it, but if that helps, I hope that's how we do it. Try not to overwhelm. I find my mistake is in having too many resources and then me feeling like we failed even though we didn't. So get the big stack and then bring it down to reasonable measure, and then get, especially middle school, high school, get their input on which ones they want to read, but then also trying to cover the basics. It's okay to tag only certain sections of a book, especially for a unit like this where it's going to be short one day at a time. And then maybe pick one novel for the whole unit or 2 novels. It's a 20 lessons. For us, we do 3 or 4 a week because we're also doing other things. And for us, for this unit, we cross out some stuff that have to do with other classes that they're already taking. So like if they were supposed to write an essay or something, she already has an English class. So I probably won't do some of those. But if it's anything helpful like aptitude, I'm looking online for some aptitude tests for careers and personality. We will also take some more next year because some of those are based on, they're science in the sense that, I argue if they're pseudoscience or science, but I mean, they have information that can be helpful for you as you're learning about yourself. But because personality is something that can grow and change, sometimes it can be useful to take it more than once. So next year we'll be doing careers and trades and spending a lot more time on that. 8th grade is a lot better, in my mind, a time to focus on that kind of stuff. But 7th grade, we're going to get a taste, try to hands-on. Our goal is to maybe start a garden, something like that. So, but yep, etiquette and manners. So there we go. All right, we will talk to you soon. We're hoping you guys are having a great day, and that as you're planning for next year, remember less is more. It's always easy to pick up something if you forgot it, but it's harder to send things back if you bought the wrong thing. And so library as much as possible, borrowing books from friends. I always washi tape the backs of them if I'm lending them to someone or if I'm borrowing them from someone, so I know who they belong to. And then I can just peel that off. It doesn't hurt the book or anything. Talk to you. Yep.